The Hogsty is brought to you by TicketClub.com, your one-stop shop for live events nationwide. Whether you're looking for game, theater, or live performance tickets, don't sweat it. TicketClub.com has you covered. So make sure you're going there for all your live entertainment needs, and make sure you're clicking over to them from the banner at the top of the Hogsty.com.
It's Just Business with Steve Thomas and John Worrell. And now, here's your host, Chris Leary.
Hello and welcome to another episode of It's Just Business on the Hogsty Network, the show where we look at the dollars and cents of the sports media, industrial, business, entertainment complex. I am joined by two talking humans. One is a regular, one is our super sub. Good morning to you, gentlemen, Alex and Steve.
Hey guys, how's it going?
Hey, yeah, great weekend for sports business. We're in the middle of the preseason, so I don't know if it's a great weekend for sports generally, but it's certainly a good weekend for us. We've got
MLB's wrapping up, right?
We've got
NHL's
Dodgers-Yankees.
about to start.
Dodgers-Yankees this weekend. It'll be over by the time you hear this.
Yeah.
That's a classic matchup between the two best teams in baseball, so that's a good story.
Yeah, I know this isn't, don't pay attention as much as I would like, but this is actually an insane baseball season, and there are just a bushel of teams in contention in both leagues. It should be an interesting home stretch here.
Well, yeah, there's only really three teams in contention for best record in baseball, but in terms of the wild cards,
I'm just talking about getting into the playoffs.
Yeah, It seems like half the teams are still in it.
Yeah, if this year is an example of what a success example of what baseball wanted to do by expanding the playoffs and making these weeks of the season a little bit more interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I've always said that I think baseball is better when the Yankees and Dodgers are good, whether you love them or you hate them.
Market teams.
And that's the two, that and the Red Sox, and arguably maybe the Cubs are the four biggest names in baseball over decades, and I just think the game is more interesting when those teams are in it, like they are this year. Because let's be honest, does anybody really want to see the Milwaukee Brewers?
No,
I don't think people in Milwaukee
care about the Brewers that much.
And I always pick on Milwaukee on the show, but you could apply the same thing to wherever, Atlanta, somewhere else. Atlanta's maybe not a good example, but
no, Atlanta probably is in the top 10. I would argue.
Frankly, the Nationals, are probably another
franchise
one.
Still there.
Yeah.
Well,
any team from Florida, we could just throw that.
No, they're horrible. Yeah. Florida shouldn't be involved in sports. But in terms of Milwaukee, I always enjoy watching Paul Molitor and Robin Yount play, so that's a bonus.
Mm-hmm.
Am I aging myself?
Yes, you are. Robin Yount. Paul Molitor is a name people may know, but Robin Yount, my God, how old is that reference? You're going to make me look him up.
Well, I don't know. I have a beef with any baseball played indoors, so that's just me.
How's that different than football played indoors?
It's not. I don't like that either.
Oh, okay. Oh, fair enough.
I think all sports are better outside. So
Paul Molitor's last appearance in baseball was in October of 1993, Chris. So
I was 10.
Well, I enjoyed him, so you can carbon date me that way. All right, so let's get serious here, which means if we're talking about August and the sports calendar, seriousness is the approaching NFL season.
Yes.
And we're going to start off with a wacky story that happened just this week. It'll be even so less than a week old by the time you hear this. And by the time you hear this, you probably can get the backstage banter from Hard Knocks about the story as well. But there was an 80-yard football game played in Western Canada. Alex, you want to give us a little bit of the lead-in?
Yeah, sure. So the game was in Saskatchewan, I believe, between the Raiders and the Packers. Now, they're playing this game up there because we all know the Raiders' stadium deal with Oakland was a hot mess to kind of get together this year because they kind of didn't have a plan for where they were going to play up until a few months ago. I'm sure you guys covered this, how they were talking about playing in San Francisco.
Oh, yeah, we covered
playing,
this. Yeah.
Just being a travel team for a year or something like that. There was a lot of weird stuff they were talking about at one point. So they decided to play one preseason game up there in the CFL Stadium, which I don't remember. I didn't look up the size. I think that's like a 30,000 person stadium. It's not big.
None of the CFL stadiums are that big.
Yeah, most CFL stadiums are around that.
Yeah, or up to 50, I think.
Yeah. Well, the Toronto team that plays in the Blue Jays Stadium, or used to. So, interesting note, this is not the first time an NFL game's been played on an 80-yard field, but you got to go back to about 1920 to get a game where they did this, and that was a championship game between the Bears and, I believe, Akron at one point. Was played on an 80-yard field because of a similar, hey, we just don't have a big enough field situation. The reasoning for why they did this, Canadian football goalposts are different from NFL posts, and there's giant holes in the ground in the end zones where the normal Canadian goalposts were going, and they couldn't fill those holes in. So
Did nobody think of this earlier?
Shorten the field.
You know, who planned this? Isn't that something that, like, the logistics manager types, should have thought about a long time ago?
Yeah, I mean, Mike Mayock's the GM of the Raiders. He probably should have at least gone and scouted it out, maybe. I don't know.
Who was the home team here?
Oakland.
The Raiders.
Yeah, okay, so Mayock, or the team president or somebody, it's like, my God. But to me, this just shows that the NFL utterly does not care about the preseason whatsoever.
Oh, no.
Except because it's basically free income.
Right.
To them. That's it. I mean, if you can't even get a 100-yard field, for God's sakes, that shows the game is utterly unimportant. It's a scrimmage.
It does. I mean, my question is, because I believe, and I don't watch CFL. I watch a lot of weird football. I just can't get into the CFL. But I think they use the old school, like, the goalpost is in front of the end zone thing. And that's why this happened. You know what I'm talking about? Like,
yeah, I do. But that's all the more reason to wonder why nobody thought about this.
Right.
Months and months ago. Why don't
we just, for one game, use those goalposts? Does it really matter that much? Leave those in.
I guess, but I mean, clearly there was a solution one way or another. That doesn't involve 80-yard stadium. To me, because that's not football. It's I think the bigger issue, certainly from a sports business perspective, which is what we are, is that this is just free money to the NFL. They don't care. The teams don't care.
For it, though.
The players don't care. The only players who do care are the back of the roster guys.
Right.
The Adrian Peterson didn't even play for the Redskins. On the week 3, nobody cares. He doesn't care. The team doesn't care. Nobody cares.
Well, speaking of players not caring or coaches not caring about players getting reps, 50 guys were sat out in that game in Saskatchewan.
Yeah, the Packers basically decided it wasn't worth the risk to play basically anyone who's a probable
33 guys from the
slot.
Packers and I think 24 from the Raiders.
So that's basically the Packers sat the entire first team and half of the second team.
Right,
basically.
in the week 3, which is usually when you want to play these guys.
Smartly. That's not a critique of the Packers. That was a smart move.
It's a good move to do that.
I mean, so if we're going to do this, if the NFL is going to do this and have fraudulent games, for lack of a better term, why are we doing it at all? I mean, other than the obvious, they're selling tickets and they're not paying the players. Quite honestly, if I was the NFLPA, I would maybe really start to insist on getting a full game check for these games.
Yeah, there's always been talk that they want to get it down to 2 games on the NFLPA side.
But they would do it if they got paid.
I'm sure. I'm sure that would
why
help.
should the NFLPA give in to just letting the owners have basically free money?
Yeah, no, I think this is going to be one of those big things whenever the CBA is negotiated.
I mean, the difference, of course, is that there's not major national television. All these games aren't televised nationally, and that the teams retain local.
Yeah.
So, I mean, maybe you couldn't give them a full game check, but I mean, pay them something.
Sure.
I mean, I don't know. It's ridiculous. Well, Chris, you look like you're having a thought.
Yeah.
Well, I see a possible solution here. Over the last, I'd say, 10 years, we've seen a growing popularity for teams to do the combined practices, right? They want to hit somebody that's not their own uniform. They want to, there's a lot of value to it. Phillip Rivers just said a couple days ago that he learns more from a combined practice than 10 preseason game experience. So there's obviously a lot of football reasons why that's more valuable. You see all the teams are doing it now. About 10 years ago, it was kind of a new thing. Now it's basically norm. And yeah, because the reason the teams don't want to give up preseason is what Steve just said. It's free money. They force season ticket holders have to pay for those tickets. So it's basically forced income. It's sort of free labor. I think if you were to flip 2 of those slots into fan experience style in-stadium combined practices, they would be preferable to all involved from a fan experience, from a coaching experience, from players, and you could easily fill that revenue slot with doing something a little bit more interesting with combined practices. And you can get hurt anywhere, but it does kind of take away the kind of facade that these preseason games have turned into. This idea that the third preseason game is the dress rehearsal, that's old news. That's leather helmets at this point.
It's not a dress rehearsal anymore.
No, now you go back 10 years ago. I think teams still used preseason the same way, where you play guys the most in the third, a little bit in the second and the first, and then no one in the fourth. Like every team did the same thing in preseason 10 years ago. Now all the younger coaches, the Sean McVays, even guys like Gruden, who, he's not young exactly as a coach, but they're all kind of going away from what the traditional preseason mentality was.
And why is the NFL playing in Canada anyway? And this is the Raiders-Packers, right? What city did this happen in,
Saskatchewan. Or Manitoba, somewhere, one of those two.
Somewhere in the province of Winnipeg, if I'm right.
And Winnipeg is not near Wisconsin.
No, Winnipeg's north.
Yeah, so why are we doing this?
Well,
what is the point? And if you're going to play a preseason game in Canada, why are you going to Winnipeg? Wouldn't you go to Montreal or Quebec or something if you really want to make inroads into Canada?
I think the number one issue was that they didn't have a stadium period to do this because they couldn't get into an agreement with the Oakland Coliseum.
Listen, they could have played at Stanford and it would have been better than playing up in freaking Winnipeg.
Well, but I think the NFL does have this whole agenda where they want to put more games in Mexico, in Canada, in London, we played in, what was it, Tokyo years ago?
We being the Redskins, because this is not a Redskins show. Yeah.
Yes, different
Alex
show,
had
sorry.
a great third quarter in Tokyo, I think.
Yeah, that was, but that was a long time ago.
I get the international expansion, and personally, I've never thought it's really a great thing for the NFL necessarily, but that's another story. But Winnipeg?
Yeah.
There's not going to be, the 33rd team is not going to be in Winnipeg.
No. I don't understand why you wouldn't go to, Vancouver.
That
would have been my instinct.
Well, that you could argue that's Seattle's home,
fair enough.
home area. But, again, Montreal and Quebec, bigger major Canadian cities. I just don't understand it. But what is, the problem here is what we're doing is we're highlighting the fallacy of the preseason, but we haven't presented a solution, to it. Because, truism number one is the NFL is not going to give up the income. Mm-hmm. That's number one. And two, I think truism number two is if the players would do almost anything if the price is right.
Sure.
And so is there a compromise here that involves, like I said, maybe not payment of a full game check, but some very greatly increased stipend that's or maybe based on preseason income or something, where you can play your 4 games, we're going to pay the players, we don't have to do stupid things like go to Winnipeg, and wouldn't that solve the problem? Because I don't know how the back of the roster guys feel about having only 2 games to prove themselves.
Sure.
How does the Casanova McKenzie's of the world? He's probably not a good example because he's already proven himself. But pick somebody else on the Redskins, Steven Sims Jr. Would Steven Sims Jr. prefer 4 games to prove himself? I would assume he would. It's a longer chance.
You got to remember, those guys are not the guys the NFLPA really cares about anyway, because they don't the odds of them making it.
No, they care about Aaron Rodgers. Not Steven
they care about the
Sims.
big money guys and the guys who will play 4 to 8 years.
Yeah.
So that's who the NFLPA is going to care about. I think Chris is onto something with his whole. You do more organized scrimmages, maybe find a way to start turning those into a revenue stream. Because remember, those are usually 2 or 3 days long. Those scrimmages,
and usually leads into a preseason game then too.
It does historically. That's how they've scheduled it. But if you got rid of the preseason game part, I don't think that's the end of the world. If you were saying, hey, we're doing the scrimmage, we're going to do it at X location, and I still think you can do neutral sites, all alternate stadiums. I just don't think you do something like Saskatchewan. You do, hey, maybe the Raiders want to play in Hawaii for a scrimmage, and then, you are kind of rewarding the players. Hey, you all go to Hawaii for a few days.
I mean, I would like to point out that there's no preseason in high school football. There's not a real preseason in college football.
No,
historically,
their spring game or whatever they call it.
Yeah, but then the first game for the Power 5 conference is always some weak sister,
Right. Yeah, they could just schedule essentially a preseason game.
Yeah, but it counts, like Appalachian State beat Michigan several years ago in one of those games.
Yeah, JMU
those
beat
upsets
Virginia
happen.
Tech. Woohoo!
Yeah, exactly. So, that was last year, 2 years ago.
No, that was more like I think 8 or 9 years ago.
Was it? Okay. Well, regardless, I would argue, I guess, that you really don't need any preseason games. You could have, like you guys are suggesting, a scrimmage or two against other teams, and then just practice every day for a month, and the coaches probably could get a good sense of who they want and don't want based on that, and just not have preseason period.
I think you could, and I mean, you were concerned about the money side. There's also the injury side to all this, and I think you're going to have a lot less injuries if you focus with more of the scrimmage practice with other teams aspect versus these preseason games where, I mean, we saw it again. I know we don't love to bring up the Redskins, but Jordan Reed got a concussion in a meaningless game.
On a dirty hit. Right.
On a dirty hit, yeah.
Right, which is the kind of things you have more control over in a controlled scrimmage,
Exactly.
right? You can redshirt guys. You have you're not there isn't stakes, so there's
think
ways to
players
manage that.
Naturally, also have a different mentality when it's a practice or a scrimmage.
Oh, they definitely have. I mean, I played football. You definitely have a different mentality in practice or scrimmage
Even
versus
with
a game.
another team, I think you would see them let up a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, but it's just not realistic to think that the NFL is going to just dump the entire preseason.
Oh no,
they just
I
aren't.
think you got to find an alternate revenue stream.
Yeah, which I think I mean, if anyone wants to be creative, I think it's there. But the other fallacy here is that, that the league or even these teams to some degree, at least the paper pushers, care about player safety, because this is coming off the heels of a marquee game in Mexico City in the regular season where they couldn't even guarantee the quality of the field. So the ideas for these things, let's have some barnstorming games, let's have international expansion, let's get our product in front of, fresh eyes. They have these ideas. I guess, we can debate whether they're good ideas or not. But if you're going to do them, can you at least give a modicum of effort into ensuring that these are situations which you want to put, or these teams are going to want to put their millions of investment in these players into these situations?
Mm-hmm. There's ideas, and then there's execution of ideas.
Yeah.
And they might be... I would give them an A on, hey, let's play in Mexico City. That's a great idea. Okay. Make sure you play at an actual good stadium for this. Not
like Mexico City makes some sense, right? Because it's the biggest city in Mexico. It's one of the biggest cities in the world.
It's a huge market.
They're not playing in Tijuana.
No.
Or Guadalajara or somewhere, and isn't Guadalajara really the Winnipeg of Mexico?
Probably.
That might be our show title. Guadalajara is the Winnipeg of Mexico. Anyway, this is more of, I guess, like you said, Alex, this is more of an execution thing than anything. Just a dumb idea all around. Mm-hmm. Move the, if you don't have a 100-yard field, move the game somewhere. Move it to the University
of West. They didn't figure this out until 20 minutes before the game.
Yeah, I know, but come on, people. Right. I mean, nobody thought of this.
Right. Nobody checked. No one's doing quality control. That's the problem.
And the Raiders, and for his part, John Gruden said, "Hey, I don't care. It was fine. The field was fine." So he's, towing the party line.
Sure.
Well, we'll see Tuesday night what he was saying back in the bowels of wherever stadium they were in.
Right.
Yeah, it'll be, probably something totally different. It'll be, this was just a dumb idea, man.
Yeah.
Something like that.
I'm not risking Antonio Brown's feet here.
Antonio Brown definitely needs a helmet, in a game like that if there's going to be a big goalpost
Smaller
in the middle
field, yeah, you're going to get more hits. They're basically going halfway between NFL and arena football at that point.
Yeah, I mean, of course, I saw the video this week or last week to you guys listening of Antonio at practice without a helmet. Mm-hmm. Did you see that? He's warming up without a helmet, because, he knows he has to report. Otherwise, he's going to have contractual problems, so he reports, but he refuses to put a helmet on.
No helmet, and they kick him out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So insane. All right, so we'll stick with the National Football League here again. And a recent report about teams, stadiums looking to invest more, innovate more, give a crap more about the in-game fan experience or attendee experience in stadiums. And they're all doing different interesting stuff or what have you, which is might be interesting on its own. And we'd love to hear, if anyone out there has gone and experienced any of these things in their home stadium, we'd love to get reports. But the reality is that this is probably a response to the fact that America's greatest TV sport has more and more people deciding to watch it on television rather than to attend games. And we're almost seeing, for years the NFL hasn't had to care about this at all because they have packed stadiums, they have huge ratings, everything's coming up winning for the National Football League. But this is a little bit of a crack in some of that, and you see some of these NFL teams start to look at what, Major League Baseball, all the other three big sports that have to play many more games have started to experiment with. You get better quality food, you care about the experience. This is something that even just 2 or 3 years ago, you couldn't imagine an NFL team caring about, right? They get into the stadium, they sell you a $12 beer and a $10 hot dog and a small seat, et cetera, and that was fine and you'll like it. So even the fact that they're starting to experiment with things that the other sports leagues have been doing for a while is really interesting, and it is a bit of a canary in the coal mine that they must be experiencing some gate receipt recession.
First of all, this article that kind of spurred our thinking about this was on Sports Business Daily. It's behind a paywall, but if you really want to track it down, it was called The More Fun League, NFL Aims for Better Fan Experience by Ben Fisher on August 19th. Major League Baseball has been doing this for years.
Right.
Years and years and years.
They've been going this way, yeah.
Yeah, the Diamondbacks have got a swimming pool, at their place, because the Dodgers got in trouble for swimming in the pool a few years ago after the last game of the season. Baseball's always had weird giveaways, and people shooting T-shirts into the crowd and all that kind of thing. Football does absolutely none of that whatsoever because they've never had to. A big part of I said that poorly. A big part of the reason why the NFL operates the way they operate is that they really don't have to put any effort into it. Mm-hmm. That's really what it is. If they don't have swimming pools in stadiums and $2 beers and hot dogs and T-shirt cannons because they don't need that to attract people.
But they didn't.
Right. Sorry. Yeah, they didn't need that to attract people. Now maybe they do.
Yeah. Now, Steve,
do.
you're probably the most traditional person I know when it comes to like stadium experience. Right. What is your thought on kind of how baseball treats the giveaways and that kind of stuff?
It's not what drags me to the stadium. Necessarily. What I get dragged to the stadium for is really, one, can we afford it? And is this a good night for the kids? It's something that they would enjoy.
Well, and I assume in your case, hey, is my team actually in town?
Yeah, right. I mean, I'm out of town from all my teams, and so certainly. I mean, the NFL, what has always attracted me to the stadium in the NFL, and I think I'm probably an anachronism here, is I can see the entire field.
Sure.
I've always said if the NFL would give an alternate broadcast of these games with the all-22 angle, I would never go to a stadium again. The only reason why I would pay hundreds and hundreds of dollars, kill my entire Sunday to drag myself to a stadium is because I can see the game from a perspective that is different than on television. That's what I like. That's really the only thing I like about the stadium experience is that. And also, though, I've been to a lot of games. Not recently, but I have been to a lot of football games and a lot of stadiums. And so, like, the allure of it is kind of lost on me. I kind of understand if somebody has never gone and all that. You want to see your favorite team, the Packers or whatever, you go. I mean, I understand that.
Yeah, especially if you're one of those legacy franchise fans.
Yeah, it's kind of like seeing a rock concert. Yeah, you can get it on YouTube or on DVD or whatever, but there's just something about seeing your favorite band live. Sure. And that's kind of what the NFL is. But if they want to drag people to the stadium 16 times a year, or 8 times a year rather, they're going to have to bring something else nowadays because it's just too expensive. It's just way too much of a hassle nowadays. So I think that's where they're going. And that's like if you notice, like the Falcons at Mercedes-Benz Stadium have reduced the price of food to reasonable prices.
Right. It's like what if you were just going out normally.
Yeah, it's like a $2 hot dog, and I don't know how much beer costs, but I mean they've reduced all the prices to make it more amenable to fans, and they should be applauded for that.
Right. And it's not just some of the stuff that they're taking from that sort of baseball example. Isn't just some of the gimmicks, right? The T-shirt cannons and stuff. It's also just like actually having to care. Most modern stadiums, non-football related, have done stuff like recruited local fan favorite restaurants to have outposts in the stadium to do subcontracts to all kinds of different providers to bring in craft beer. I mean, and this is not a dig, so millennials don't yell at me. But all the market research on millennials say that they value experiences, right? That they're willing to pay money for experiences. So it's part of that. Like you don't want to go and get, kind of a industrial hot dog. You want whatever the kind of, local company is. So you'll see, Nat Stadium opened with Five Guys and the, stuff like that. So, and that stuff's not like a radical departure for the leagues, but it is an acknowledgement that people are if they're going to come, they're going to fork out the money. They want a more holistic experience than just the game.
And I think on the food angle, that is one area where the NFL's quickly kind of adapted. I know you see these stories around the start of every season. Oh, this team's doing this thing with food. Arizona always does some kind of insane food, like just a behemoth amount of food that you can order for like $60, where it's like get 50 chicken tenders on top of a burger, on top of like 18 strips of bacon,
Okay, let me explain.
Going to the food angles pretty easy.
Yeah.
Some of the
let me explain about the food. The reason why historically in the past there have not been like local restaurants and whatnot, and Alex knows this about me, and Chris probably does too. I'm happy with just a hot dog. I don't care whatsoever, But so it's not me. But there are a couple food providers that have historically provided all the food. Aramark is the big name, but there's like one or two others that do it. And so if you go to a stadium and you see some weird place that's like Johnson's Pizza or something you've utterly never heard of, it's just an Aramark creation. And so they have some kind of business deal that Aramark provided all the food. It was easy. It was done. Well, now if you have to bring in like your local restaurant, now it's a lease and now it's a whole different financial arrangement and it's just more of a pain. And so the Aramark thing is easy. Now it's mass processed food. So if you get away from people like me, people care, and I understand that even though it's not my thing. And so by bringing in Five Guys and whatnot, you're getting away from Aramark, which is just more difficult, for everybody. And so that's kind of why historically the food has been what it is.
Yeah, but it's been changed, I think, in most stadiums at this point.
Well, no, Aramark still is a provider. It's just they're leasing other space out.
Well, that's what I mean. Most stadiums have at least a couple generic leases out there at this point. Yeah. And same with beer. Beer, it's a similar concept where there's beer distributors. They traditionally just gave you the cheapest thing they had, and now they're like, well, we also have a bunch of microbrews, so why don't we give you some microbrews too? So it's the same as the Aramark concept.
But they figured this out in hockey and basketball arenas, which are often the same arenas, as well as then in baseball stadiums, and then most of those places double as concert venues. And so
Right.
everywhere but an NFL stadium,
the NFL's been last to get to it, yeah. No question.
Yeah, and again, it's all because the NFL hasn't had to care. You know, and if you put net income in danger, then the NFL is going to start to come around, and that's kind of where they are. You know, big picture wise, the TV ratings have gone down, attendance is down.
Yep.
You know, precipitously in the case of some teams, like the Redskins, for example.
Yeah, it's like down 50%. Yeah.
Yeah, whatever the number is, right? And they're not the only team. You know, like that Atlanta Redskins game last week, there was nobody there.
Right.
There could have been more than 10,000 people, or some small number.
Again, preseason, no.
Yeah, I know, but I mean, still, that's not even. You're not even filling a basketball arena. You know, with that.
No.
You could have played that in the Atlanta Hawks arena and gotten the same crowd. You know.
The only other thing that talking about this stadium experience stuff, food is easy to fix. It's the bigger things, the stuff you had to probably build into the stadium at the get-go. That's where I think the NFL's still kind of struggling with some of these older stadiums. I mean, you look at the new Atlanta stadium, that Mercedes-Benz stadium. It's insane. Like, the size of it is huge. My company I work for actually did a lot of the AV for that stadium, building like their jumbotron and stuff, like that kind of stuff. Which you don't think about it. That's also part of the fan experience.
Definitely.
Do we have like giant screens all over the place that are unique in some way? Like that stuff, you kind of got to wait till the next stadium to do a lot of that.
Yeah, and there's so much more enhanced stuff that people are expecting that if you're judging whether I'm going to get off my couch or go to the stadium, things like red zone, like tracking your fantasy team,
right?
Stuff like real time stuff from so often when you go to a game now, you're kind of outside of maybe some baseline scores that are run somewhere in the stadium, you're kind of blacked out of what else is going on in the league for that 3 or 4 hours that you're in the stadium. Right. And that just is not the case. That's another thing that's just not the case at home. If you got multiple TVs, you can have the red channel and you got your laptop, blah, blah, blah. This is how a lot of people experience football games now. And so you kind of, in the current stadium experience, you kind of are sort of like getting none of that.
Well, and also, I mean, it's a huge time commitment.
It is.
If you have to commute, you're 30 minutes away from the stadium. You're going to get there an hour early. The game's a 1:00 game, on the East Coast, and so you're leaving your house at, 11.
Yeah.
At
best case, if you're not going to tailgate, yeah.
Yeah, or you don't live farther away or whatever. In some cases, much earlier, and then the game ends at 4. And because there's 70,000 cars, or maybe less in today's world, it takes an hour to get out of the parking lot.
You're basically committing a whole day anytime you go to a game.
It's a huge time commitment, and then you get there, you pay $30 for parking, and then you pay, $100 total for food, for a couple people for the whole time. It's just a huge commitment. Now the thing is, though, like the swimming pools in the stadiums and whatnot, and that's a gimmick.
Sure.
I don't know how that improves the fan experience.
Fans love gimmicks. People are stupid.
I guess, and like the party decks. Okay, I get that. I personally, I would kill myself before I had to do that. But I mean, the party decks, I understand. But I mean, at some point, there's enough gimmicks. There's only so many gimmicks you can do.
Well, I hate to give our nemesis Jerry Jones any props, but it looks like if you're looking for models on how to do it right, I mean that stadium in Dallas did it right. Like it's got the party decks. It's got the giant, hit it with a punt jumbotron. It's got the art gallery. I mean, it made it like they did without having to, kind of go to the hot tub on the 50-yard line type of stuff.
Well, they put in stripper poles.
Right. So a few gimmicks, but generally it's like they created almost a Dallas Cowboys theme park experience when you go there.
And I've been to that stadium. It is a very nice stadium. There's plenty of parking. Parking's not a hassle. You just walk in and out. They have a lot of pregame stuff right outside the gate that's going on. They have bands, like a band playing outside the gate, and you can kind of hang out there and whatnot. I mean, again, it's not really personally my scene, but that's the pregame stuff is what's so dramatically improved from like FedEx Field, for example. There's no pregame anything at FedEx Field.
The band walks around in a circle. That's what.
Of note. But they had like a stage and a rock band, up there. The game I was there.
And the Redskins and the Cowboys used to be like 1-2, 2-1 in terms of revenue, and the one's going north and one's going south.
Yeah, I mean the Redskins are still way up there in revenue. It's just the stadium revenue part of it is going down.
Right. Well, they dropped out of the top 5, I think, last time.
Did they?
Yeah.
Did they? Yeah.
But and the big reason why Dallas has been able to maintain and then grow is that stadium.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Of course, it's very expensive. When you're talking stadiums, that's $1 billion project in today's climate.
Right.
Somebody's got to pay for that.
It was $1 billion project.
It was. Yeah. It was. I mean, somebody has to pay for that.
Yeah.
And the NFL can't build. Even the NFL can't build $32 billion stadiums.
No.
Even the NFL as a whole can't do that. And owners financing that kind of thing by themselves out of their own pocket, a handful of them can. Who's the guy who owns the Seahawks up there? Steve Allen. Paul Allen. Thank you. Yeah. Steve Allen is a Hollywood guy. Paul Allen can afford
R.I.P.
it.
It's the Paul Allen's family.
Yeah.
He died last year.
That's true. Stan Kroenke can afford it. But guys like, Dan Snyder, that's a huge debt service to pay.
Yeah, Dan Snyder has a lot of money, but not that much. Like, the number of people who have the kind of money to build that, there's probably less than 100 in the United
States. Well, just from a team revenue standpoint, if you confine it to team revenue, the debt service on $1 billion stadium eats up all of your team revenue, if not more.
Right.
So that's why when people say, the owner should pay for their stadiums, well, that's why they don't. It's just financially it doesn't really work unless you have Stan Kroenke doing it, who's going to make money in other ways.
Right.
So there you go.
Which Dan Snyder's proven to be not super effective at making money in other ways at this point.
Right.
Hello, Johnny Rockets. All right, so we'll put the NFL to bed here for at least a few hours and move on to the sport that should be winning the late summer, and maybe from a competitive analysis is having a good season, and that's Major League Baseball. But we're not gonna waste time on pennant races. We're not gonna waste time on the Cy Young race or the wild cards. What we're gonna talk about is truck stop boner pills and its relationship to Major League Baseball. Alex, you're the one that brought the story to our attention, so why don't you fill the story with
with a few facts?
Yes.
So the headline in itself was the only reason to read the story, and the story is that the MLB had to send out a memo to players to stop buying truck stop male enhancement pills. These aren't necessarily boner pills, I don't think, because I don't think you can get boner pills in a truck stop still. But players are buying pills at truck stops that are the Blue Rhino male enhancement kind of thing, and apparently they're doing this as kind of like a steroid, banned substance issue. Is what's
it's the chemicals in these male enhancement pills.
Right.
Are pinging on drug tests.
Well, they're probably enhancing testosterone. Probably that's probably the key thing, right?
Exactly.
Probably so. Yeah, probably so.
It's probably a testosterone enhancement. I don't know about HGH being in any of these because I don't know.
That's different.
I've never used them.
Not.
Yeah,
that's a different thing entirely.
Right.
But these pills are not exactly FAA regulated.
No.
I mean, if you're if you're taking
anything in a truck stop is FAA regulated other than the gasoline? Or
well, did I say FAA? I meant FDA, not FAA.
Yeah.
FAA is the Federal Aviation Administration.
Yes.
They're not regulating.
Neither federal agency is oversighting.
I don't think any federal agency is really regulating what they sell behind the glass.
There's not like an office of male enhancement pills somewhere.
No.
No, I mean it's obviously a funny headline, and are athletes dumb enough to go to the truck stop and buy these things? Apparently,
yes.
So yes.
Yes.
Would normal people do that? No.
Yeah, they spend a lot of time on the road. They get lonely.
I mean most people, if you need male enhancement issues, would not go to the truck stop. You go to a urologist, maybe. Right. I don't know, but not. You wouldn't go to, Buc-ee's, for that.
No. I think Buc-ee's might be too classy of a joint for this kind of thing.
It might be, yeah.
I think you're talking more about your Exxons and your,
yeah,
BPs.
Maybe. So, I mean, the moral of the story is don't take stupid stuff if you're subject to drug tests.
Right. Don't buy any medication in a truck stop. That's my moral of the story.
Yeah, and there is it does get confusing for these players what you can and cannot take, just not because of the league, but just because of the kind of how much stuff there is out there. I mean, Golden Tate in the NFL sitting 4 games for who knows if this is true or not, but claiming that it was his his doctor's prescription for
he was trying to have a kid, right?
Yeah, what's it called? Whatever.
Infertility drugs.
Infertility, right. So
yes.
some infertility enhancement. So, it is a slippery slope, but, stay out of the truck stop might be the moral of the story.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, and as I've always said also, players can ask their union if something is approved or not, because the union has a list, and they will help you. Now most people aren't going to want to go to the union and say, can I take, Blue Magic boner pills or whatever, is this allowed? They're probably not going to do that, but that's on you.
And if you're taking them because they think you are skirting the rules, then you're obviously not, because the reality is that these players aren't taking them, to deal with groupies better. They're taking them because they think there's probably some little cheat code around the rules.
Well, I don't know, maybe... I mean, somebody had to do it first, right? So somebody had to be taking it for some reason.
But I don't know what these pills do. I mean, if these pills are a size issue or like a male size issue, or if it's like...
I think it's more of a stamina
stamina thing. I don't know what they do.
And that's the key. They all of them, the only thing that they can do to have any kind of legitimacy, and I'm talking slim margin of legitimacy here, but is have some kind of testosterone boost.
Right.
That's basically that's the realm of what the chemicals that they put in there are able to do, and of course that is, boosting your testosterone in an athletic, sort of drug enhancement way. On there is a legitimate thing, and there's much more sophisticated ways that people try to cheat with increased testosterone.
Well, I suppose some of them could just be straight up placebos, too.
Oh, sure. I'm sure most of them are.
Yeah.
You're right. I mean, with the skull and crossbones as like their cool logos, legit.
Oh, I never said it's legit. I mean, but you could, like Chris says, lace these pills with testosterone, and if you have an increased testosterone level, that's going to ping on a drug test, and or some of them may just be sugar pills,
or just something that tricks the body into producing a little bit. Like it doesn't have to necessarily be testosterone involved directly in the pill, but it's got something to do with that system biologically.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll track the story and see if it grows.
Somebody insert rim shot here.
Yeah.
Well, you're editing it.
Yeah, that's true.
So we'll go into a story with Major League Baseball and drugs that maybe is a slightly more serious, and that is that a big drug sting in Central America kicked up a couple of... now, I know Luis Castillo is out of the league. Is Octavio... they're both out of the league, right?
Yeah. I think they're both retired at this point.
So 2, Major League Baseball players of note, not total scrubs. I had Luis Castillo on many a fantasy baseball team over the years. Right. Got basically in this dragnet, got drugged, so to speak.
Got dragged.
Drugged, yes.
Drug dragged.
So why are these players doing this, I guess, is the major question. Why risk?
There's not a good answer for this. You've got to be just dumb beyond all comprehension to get involved in drug trafficking and laundering money. It's if you need somewhere to waste your money, I'm available. If you want to just literally set money on fire, call me.
Well, I don't think they're... I mean, from what the story seems to indicate, they were really just being a middleman for the money laundering aspect. So it's not like they're wasting money. They are
wasting money because now they're going to be in
now they're going
prison
to jail
in
if
Dominican
they
Republic, and that's probably not pleasant, would be my guess.
No, I would assume not. But
although they could probably flip themselves out of it.
Yeah, well...
maybe so, but the point is, why do athletes do dumb things like this? I mean, it's probably because, they're not very smart to begin with. This is the culture they came from. These guys aren't American. In the case of Octavio Dotel and Luis Castillo, presumably they're from the DR originally, and so they didn't grow, they didn't come from like a privileged background where, even a middle class background where nobody even contemplate this stuff. If you're from like Nebraska or somewhere, and your parents are insurance salesmen, you're not going to get involved in this. But if you're a poor kid from the DR, you might. And in the case of these two guys, they just sort of never grew out of it. It's sad, really, more than anything. It's just sad.
Well, and again, we're, assuming that they did it.
Assuming they get right. Assuming they're guilty.
That it's not
Allegedly.
like they had a money manager who's using their business in some way that we didn't, they didn't know
and
about.
that could be. Yeah, we're assuming guilt, but yeah,
Right.
certainly all these are alleged allegations. But
Right.
players generally have done stuff like this before.
Right.
Leon Lett or Russell Maryland? One of those two guys got caught with like
Leon
20
Lett.
pounds of weed, 20 or 30 pounds of weed in his trunk,
Mm-hmm.
on a freeway. They're not the first to get involved in things like this by any stretch of the imagination.
No, but again, that's also a very different thing where you're running drugs versus, funneling money somehow to.
Yeah, it's not any better. It might
No.
be worse.
No, I don't know. Yeah, it sounds like the people involved on the actual drug side here were some pretty terrible people too.
Oh,
Yes.
Yeah.
I'll play defense attorney for Luis and Octavio here, if I could, and say
Sure.
that one thing that's interesting, and this will be something that will probably come out as this case emerges, is these Central American drug cartels are one of the globe's biggest organized crime and one of the most dangerous. And
Oh, yeah, no question.
We've seen stories with Major League Baseball players before. There's also pressure on, they held a lot of sway in these areas. We also don't know what kind of pressure was put on these players or their whatever entourage or however they got involved that says, we're going to kill your family. We're going to kidnap your family unless you do these things. That is what these drug cartels do in general. It's how, especially in these Central American ones, it's a lot of that. And we've actually seen Major League Baseball players in the past get caught up in this where they've been abducted or families been abducted. We've seen violence against players and families. So we also don't know what kind of those kind of pressures are brought to bear for this. So that's an interesting part that may come out in the case. And then, slimy people looking to separate athletes from their money in bad investments and stupid deals, regardless of whether they're illegal or not or involve narcotics, is not a new story.
That crosses ethical boundary,
Yes.
all ethical bounds too, for
Right.
sure, or ethnic rather, not ethical. Just off the top of my head, Big Papi got
Right.
shot, and it was the DR, was it not the Dominican Republic?
And the guy who did it was a drug dealer.
Yeah,
Well,
and they
the
were
guy
trying to get
behind it.
They were
Yeah.
trying to get someone else. Then Poppy was just there. I don't know how you don't recognize Big Poppy if you're in the DR, but the old Dodger, Yasiel Puig, who's now with the Reds, and the Reds traded him with someone else. He had drug dealers chasing him. Because they smuggled him out of Cuba. This is not the first time. There have been soccer players murdered,
Sure.
just straight up executed. In some of these Central American countries. It's just not nearly the first time whatsoever.
There was a player for the Nationals a few years ago whose family got kidnapped, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I can't remember who it is, but it's not nearly the first time this has happened.
Yeah.
It won't be the last. And it's just in this case, it's just a function of these guys are from the Dominican Republic. It's just not. It's just not like being from, Detroit or whatever. It's just totally different.
Well, Detroit might not be the best city to use.
Maybe not. Yeah, maybe not. But you get my point.
Right. And who knows? Well, there's just so little info that's come out to this point. The story I was reading, which was on CNN this morning about this, their attorneys haven't even been given anything official from the Dominican Republic saying what they're being accused of. So,
Which is not surprising.
No. And we're talking international law with a ostensibly undeveloped country.
Well, no, we're talking about Dominican Republic law, not international law.
Well,
that's worse. That's far worse.
Yeah, that's true.
That's international law. There's at least some standards. You could at least end up in The Hague. know, in the DR, you're gonna, God knows what's gonna happen in the Dominican Republic.
Well, but there is extradition and stuff like that's gonna have to happen. So
yeah, right.
Interesting. All right. Well, we've got one more baseball-related story. So this is a little bit of a media story, and we'll close on this. Justin Verlander, who made his bones with the Detroit Tigers, it was, I don't know.
You have this bone theme going through the stories today.
Yeah, that's right. Thanks, Alex. That's a special sauce Alex brings to the show when he joins as our super sub. And so he countless All-Stars appearances with Detroit. I think it helped bring them to the World Series one year. Whatever.
Arguably was the best pitcher for a couple years in the entire league.
Yeah, in Detroit. And now he plays for the Astros.
Houston, yeah.
And I guess he has beef. I'm not sure what the nature of the beef is with the beat reporter at the Detroit Free Press. And he convinced the Astros to ban, block, all the B's, this reporter from covering Verlander's game and covering the game Houston versus Detroit in Houston. It's probably a minor dust-up in general, but it probably gets Houston in a bit of hot water because that's actually against the rules to bar media access, especially ones that have official credentials. So,
So there's a contract between the Baseball Writers Association of America and Major League Baseball that says all Major League Baseball teams need to admit all reporters that are credentialed by the Baseball Writers Association of America. Okay, that's what's going on here. And so this writer from the Detroit Free Press, who neither the team nor the paper identified specifically, but you can figure out who it is, and I'll tell you the name here in a minute. The Astros straight up said this guy isn't coming in. Yeah, Detroit Free Press, you can send anybody else, that's fine. But this dude ain't coming in our stadium. And it had something to do with some thing that Justin Verlander didn't like. There was a headline, which I got to admit I thought was pretty funny. There was a headline that Detroit Free Press put out just like an hour right after the game that said Justin Verlander pitches Detroit Tigers to victory again. And of course the Astros, the background here is that the Astros were favored by an enormous amount, like the biggest odds in baseball history, or Vegas odds in history for a baseball game over Detroit, because the Astros are a really good team, Detroit's terrible.
Yeah, and then is Detroit the worst team in the league right now? Is that
well, they're one of them. Yeah. I don't know if they're the worst,
it's
but
either
they're
them
one
or the Orioles right now.
Right, and Detroit won that game, and it was in Houston. So it's probably some combination of all these things. So the Astros, courtesy of Justin Verlander, said this guy isn't coming in, and Major League Baseball kindly said, no, you can't do this. There's a contract here, that says you have to. So it's baseball players being petty and baseball teams being stupid, because but he didn't have to talk to the guy.
You're right.
It's not like the NFL where there's he's like doing a press conference after the game. This is locker room, and Verlander could have just said, I don't want to talk to you. Bye. And that would have been a bit rude, but that would have been the end of it, and nobody would have thought about it.
I mean, even in a press conference situation, he could always take their their beat reporter or manager, whatever, aside and say, hey, if this guy wants to ask a question, I'm not answering it. Work around it.
The White House is doing that.
Yeah.
And has always done that for under many presidents. So certainly baseball teams can do it. Do it too.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's
we know enough reporters. Every reporter has one or two guys in every locker room that they have some kind of beef with, and vice versa.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
That's not weird in sports, by the way. It's just weird that you hear something like this happen.
This reporter's name is Anthony Fenich, apparently, is who, if you kind of read between the tea leaves, that's who this was about. So, I mean, the moral of the story here, Justin, get over yourself. Just you do you. Don't worry about what the media is doing. Don't try to, bar players or, reporters from the locker room. You can't do that. And generally speaking, I think the media has way too high an opinion of itself. I'm kind of all about, the fake media thing. Fake news is, true in many respects. But this is sports. You're contractually obligated to be reasonable to the media. don't try to do stupid things like this.
Yeah, sports especially is the least important news. I mean,
it wouldn't have been any news.
It's not important.
It wouldn't have been news at all if Anthony Finich had gone up to Verlander and said, "Can I ask you a few questions?" and he said no.
Right.
That would have been we wouldn't have heard about this, and we wouldn't be talking about it.
I've been told no by players. I mean, it happens.
You've been told no this year by players. As a matter of fact,
Ooh, dish
within the last month or two.
It wasn't anything that was like, it was just,
I don't have time. Personal.
Yeah, it's like, no, I don't feel like it, and that's the end of it. So it's Justin Verlander being petty. It makes him look bad. It makes the Astros look stupid. Yes. The end.
And there is a very legitimate reason why the Baseball Writers Association and Major League Baseball have this kind of relationship, because baseball players, the baseball writers vote on the Hall of Fame, and there's a long. I mean, the growth of baseball and the writing about it. Those things are in the DNA. That's why they have these kinds of decades long relationships.
Without professional sports writers, I mean, baseball never would have, grown to what it is, because they kind of go hand in hand, like you said.
Yeah, and in a case of Justin Verlander, I mean, understand, people, that the way the Hall of Fame voting works in baseball is different than the NFL, because I've made my feelings on the NFL's Hall of Fame voting known many times on this show and the Hogsty both. Well, baseball has hundreds of voters.
Right.
And they're all pro Baseball Writers Association guys, and you are very naive if you do not think some of these votes have everything to do with petty grudges going back decades.
Most of them do.
Yeah, exactly right. There's a reason why Mariano Rivera was the first one ever to be a unanimous Hall of Fame vote, unanimous first ballot Hall of Famer. It's a huge part of it is this, like Barry Bonds, for example, absent the drug stuff, he wouldn't have been unanimous, even though he's probably the greatest hitter in baseball history. And it's because the press didn't like him, so they're not going to vote for him. And so Verlander, probably Anthony Finich, if you have a Hall of Fame vote, which he probably does, probably ain't going to vote for Verlander.
No.
In the first ballot, even though Verlander is probably clearly a Hall of Famer.
Yeah, I would say he is.
Yeah. He's not in the small room of Hall of Fame, maybe, but he's obviously a Hall of Fame caliber player, and Anthony Finich probably ain't going to vote for him.
Right.
Because of this.
That's also why MLB only puts in a handful of guys every year, whereas the NFL always needs more space for the guys they want to put in, it seems like.
Well, I mean, it works totally different. The Major League Baseball ballot, you drop off the ballot, if you don't get enough votes after a few years, and the processes are totally different. It's not really comparable.
I like the Major League process actually more. MLB.
I'm all about getting the media out of the voting personally. I don't think you need to have hundreds of baseball writers responsible for inducting anybody into the Hall of Fame, unless it's like the baseball writers are running the Hall of Fame. Right.
Which, by the way, there is I believe, a Sports Writer Hall of Fame, too.
Well, it's like if the Pro Baseball Writers Association wants to create a Hall of Fame and put people in it, be my guest. But that's not what this is.
They did. It's the one they have.
Well, but Major League Baseball is involved in it, though.
Yeah, I know.
But I'm getting off on a tangent.
And it's not changing anytime soon anyway.
No, it's not. No.
And whatever system you'd have is going to bring controversy. Just the nature of what it is, deciding who gets in and who doesn't, will always be political, and you can always say is rigged. All right, that brings us to another close. Alex, as our special guest, why don't you give the listeners ways to find you online?
Well, just go to Twitter and look for Alex35332 and ignore all the posts I do about the XFL.
Or Alex sometimes mans a Hogsty Twitter.
That's true. During games, I've been manning the Hogsty Twitter a lot lately because I'm in market and Steve's not, and it makes it easier.
Yeah, so you can find both Alex and I on the Hogsty Twitter, generally speaking.
Or on the Hogsty's website. You can bother us.
Right.
All right, you can find me at ChrisLarry33 on Twitter. You can, find me, do whatever. I don't care. Yell at me. Be annoyed at me. There's going to be a plethora of stuff that I'm sure will trigger most of you. Steve, any other Hogsty Network house cleaning or business or promo you want to do?
We're about to transition into the 2 shows a week starting with week 1 of the season.
That's
coming
for the
up,
Hogsty, not for you guys. Right.
Yeah, Hog. That's what he's asking.
Yeah,
you know, and we're a part of the Big Heads Media Network now. So look for us on the Big Heads podcast website, and that's about it.
All right.
This week.
Well, we will see you in 2 weeks, because I think we'll start playing real games by that point, right? In the NFL? Or just about that time? All right. So we will see you in 2 weeks. Bye.